Hi, everybody. Hope you had a good break. For those that are in my GMT Plus area, hopefully you've ordered some dinner like I have. Um, I am really excited for this next session. Luminate has been a sponsor for, I want to say, 3 or 4 years now. So, first of all, really appreciate that. I want to say it's one of our most used platforms for the hackathon because it's the consumption data that everyone's always asking about when they say, well, what about the streaming data? This is where it lives, guys. It's really exciting. And on top of all of that, Grant is one of my favorite little stories about Measure of Music because Grant was a hackathon participant in Measure of Music and has since come back multiple years to speak at Measure of Music, now working at Luminate, which he did not work at when he was a participant the first time. So you're going to hear from him. But before you hear from Grant, you're going to hear from Erik. Erik, welcome to Measure of Music. Oh, I'll mute you. There you go.
Thank you. Hi, Christine.
Hi.
Great. Thanks so much for that great introduction. Super excited to be here. My name is Erik Zambrano. I am dialing in from Los Angeles, where Luminate is headquartered. When I heard Luminate and Hackathon, I was super excited. So thank you for letting me be a part of this. Excited to hear about the amazing products and solutions that the folks on this session will be building on top of Luminate. Quick agenda for my section here. I'm going to kick us off and do a quick introduction to our company, our solutions, but then Grant and Roatanee on my team will go more in depth into those solutions and also walk you through how you'll be able to access these tools for this hackathon. Before I jump in, just a quick introduction to myself. This is actually my first job in the music industry. Music has always been a passion for me, but just never had an opportunity to be in the music industry. So before joining Luminate, I spent time in the world of advertising agencies. I also spent time working at financial technology startups before deciding about a year ago that I wanted to pursue my passion for music professionally. And I actually found out about Luminate and my current position on Instagram. So you never know where your next opportunity can come from. So super excited to kind of give you that context. And if Grant, you could go ahead and start the screen share, I will jump into the introduction to Luminate. Or if I need to do that, happy to do that as well. All right, I will, okay, there we go. Sweet. Thanks, Grant. All right, this is who you'll be hearing from today. I already introduced myself. Grant and Roatanee will go ahead and make their introductions when they kick off their sections. If we can go to the next slide. The quick agenda, we'll do an overview, we'll go into the use cases, and then share the data availability for the hackathon. All right, quick introduction to Luminate. We have been around for 30 years. The way to think about our business is that we have a music business, which is the team that I'm on. I'm on the sales team here at Luminate, but we also have a film and TV division as well. And our North Star as a company is to build the entertainment economy's most essential, accurate, and objective data, and really make it accessible to everyone, including the participants for this hackathon. So what that looks like on the music side is that we have a unique relationship in the music industry in that we have first-party consumption data. So I know Christine mentioned this in her introduction, right? So this is the likes of Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, including retail partners reporting product sales. They send us that data on a daily basis, and we make it available to our partners in the ecosystem. So this means that we often get written about and referenced in the press because music is certainly a passion point that matters to a lot of people. So wanted to kind of just share some of the more exciting kind of press coverage we've received recently. And if we go to the next slide, and Grant, do you mind hitting that stop share button on your screen just so the folks can see the rest of this text here? Thank you. This is one of my favorite slides. Please reference this after this presentation. It just shows you the diversity of partners that we have, that are customers. So music matters to a lot of the types of industries that are listed here. I get to work on our live music initiatives, as well as some of our talent representation partners, film and TV studios, and also brands. So brands that are invested in, want to make an investment in music, but want to use a data-driven approach. We work with them as well. So just something to reference in the future if you guys are thinking about different use cases. This slide will be super helpful. I already covered kind of the verified music consumption, but some stats here. More than 500 reporting partners send us millions and billions of data points on artists, albums, and songs. So when it comes to the what people are listening to on a global basis, we are the definitive source. Our data is first party, verified, and never scraped or modes like that. Fun fact, our data actually powers the Billboard charts. So when you see that an album or an artist went #1, our data is helping to inform that. As I mentioned, we have a film and TV group. I won't go into that for this call, but if you're interested, please look on our website. But we also, in addition to what people are listening to, we also go into why and how. So we have an insights part of our music team where we go out to market, survey consumers about their attitudes, behaviors, patterns of consumption when it comes to entertainment, music, and we actually get down to the artist and genre level. So Grant, when he goes through that section, he'll kind of show you some of the tools that are available on the insights front, and Roatanee will walk you through our consumption platform, both the UI, but also the API as well. And lastly here, this slide before I jump off is some of the partners that we have. So you can reference that as well. Hopefully that was a useful introduction. And now we're going to pivot over to Grant to take us to this next section.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, as mentioned, I actually got my job from this conference. So I love this conference, and I'm excited to start going through it and looking at and watching all the other ones. I'm not going to get as much work today done as I had hoped, because these are such interesting panels and partners and stuff. So I'm prior to getting into the music industry, I was in political strategy and consulting in a pollster. So I did strategy and data work prior to coming to Luminate. And this is Luminate is a great company. As Erik mentioned, we do the streaming analytics, but my job specifically is survey research, which makes sense because the polling background, I did surveys. So now instead of asking who are you voting for in 2024, I'm asking who are you listening to, or what are your favorite genres? And so I'll just kind of be running through some insights, some of which comes from the streaming data, and then some of which comes from research that we've done. So this is largely pulled from our most recent year-end report, which comes out every year and summarizes kind of 2024. We integrate both the streaming and the survey data, and then we also have a separate film and TV year-end report. But overall, we're just looking at things like major growth trends. So the volumetric streaming growth year over year is 14%. And then when you exclude the US, because the US is a kind of a slower growth market now, not in terms of revenue, because they're now starting, as they start to implement price increases, it doesn't mean that the revenue is slowing down, but it does mean that streaming growth rates are slowing down. So we're seeing, a lot faster growth in emerging markets in Asia. And that's some other stuff we'll track with the global data. But for just focusing on the US right now, we also have total album equivalents, which is a big factor in the Billboard charts. We have digital music consumption. We can break it out by on-demand audio, on-demand video, digital album sales, and then physical sales are down 1 percentage point. And, that's a big trend because previously we had pretty substantial growth in vinyl specifically. So that's kind of the summary of the U.S. market. And, you know, in these reports, we also break out stuff like genre. And one thing you'll learn as you go through this conference, that metadata in music is like such a challenge, and genre is such a funny thing. But so like this doesn't capture the whole picture if you're just looking at market share by genre, but at least these types of metadata are helpful for us to understand the landscape and how things are changing. And we also have subgenres, which go even more granular, that, you know, you can break out all sorts of different things, and metadata on the artist, which I'll get to in a second. But in interesting trends here, the growing core genres in the US. Pop was a big year for pop, as everybody knows. And so pop grew. This is the share point change. So this is the change in market share, 2024 versus 2023. Rock, due to several breakout artists and also alternative genres growing. Latin has been growing consistently for a long time, for the past like 5 years. And so this is just kind of a continuation of the trend. And country music also growing as well, as this kind of seeped, you know, more into the mainstream. And we've written about that, how that's changing as Gen Z adopts country music at larger rates, which has occurred, and particularly Gen Z women. As I mentioned earlier, we have the share point change by market. So we can also, we do 48 territories. We actually just added, I think, 12 more in the Middle East and North Africa. And so we're going to get even more, regional information. But for now, you know, the fastest growing markets, at least volumetrically, are in Asia, Europe, Latin America. And you can see that US and Canada and Australia and New Zealand have lower growth rates there. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, we have metadata on all these artists. So in the UI that you'll be able to use, or the API, whatever your preference is, you can like pull specific attributes about artists. So specific, like in this instance, we're looking at gender, and it shows the top 10 pop artists, 7 out of the top 10 are women. And then they also have a disproportionate ODA streaming share in that top 10, and it continues. But down by the top 100, it starts to get closer to 50-50 gender split. And this is just among pop artists. So, and again, this was a big year for pop, and you saw that with the growth rates there. Another thing we do is we engage with fair amount of brand clients or artists who are looking to do brand partnerships. And this comes in many forms. Engaging super fans is a big conversation. And so our research kind of helps clients dive down into those specific, attributes. And so we developed recently this index that is supposed to be one composite kind of comprehensive metric for rating an artist's influence, initially with the intention being for like brand engagements, but there's also a variety of use cases. And I think people have just had a lot of fun getting into these like radar charts that we've built. And you'll see the top 3 here. Taylor Swift was number 1. And actually, I should get into the inputs of the score. We have 5 dimensions. We have streaming awareness, to the proportion of people that are aware of an artist. That comes from our survey data. The streaming data comes from our exclusive DSP partnerships. Then we have public perception, comes from our survey data. Fan engagement, which is like the rate. Public perception is like how much they like the artist, how positive the feelings are towards the artist from the public. And then fan engagement is like among people who are aware of the artist, how likely are they to activate on any given touch point, whether that's with the artist. So that's buying a ticket to a show, that's watching them on TV, or that's a receptivity to purchase a product that the artist has endorsed. And then lastly, we have social media data, which isn't something we do. A lot of people in this space have a lot of social media data, but we were able to pull social media data for this specific instance for this index. And that's just your Instagram and TikTok followerships, because YouTube's represented in the streaming metric from the video data that we get. So taking all of that together and then applying some weights to them, so streaming gets a little bit of a higher weight and awareness gets a little bit of a higher weight on the ultimate score. We're able to add all that up and come up with a single holistic metric. And you can see we're doing a comparison here between Elton John, Beyonce, and Adele. And Beyonce just has, a really, really high streaming footprint. She has really high awareness. I think it's like 83%. It's like nearly universal. And then you have her public perception, and the white line there is just the average artist. Her public perception is slightly lower, and her fan engagement is slightly lower, which means that the people who are aware of her, there's more people who are just like meh, but there are also millions of hardcore fans, and that's so balancing all of that out, we get this kind of composite score, and you can see, if you want somebody if you're trying to do an activation on social, you can see which artists have that stronger presence there versus the public perception thing. Like Dolly Parton is probably the best example of someone who has near universal awareness and universal public perception. And then another thing we can do is we can cut this data by generation. So here if we cut the survey data by Gen Z specifically, and you rerun the score, you run all those inputs, and you get a pretty different score. Rihanna comes up as number 1 over Taylor Swift. Eminem, weird, but it makes sense if you think about the fact that their parents were very big Eminem fans, so they are very aware of Eminem, and they don't hate him that much. Ariana Grande, and he obviously has a big streaming footprint as well. Ariana Grande, The Weeknd, Beyonce, Post Malone, and then Juice WRLD, who's passed away, but he I think really, when you can also then to this point, you can switch over to say, I don't just want to see the highest scores among Gen Z. I want to see the scores that are most unique to Gen Z, which is, you can see the Juice WRLD score among Gen Z is significantly higher than it is among Gen Pop. And then if you go down the list there, you got Lil Uzi Vert, Polo G, Olivia Rodrigo, Lil Nas X, Post Malone, Kendrick Lamar, Rihanna. So this is just one way that we can really dissect a specific audience. We've done it among 13 to 34-year-old women for an athleisure brand. There's a whole bunch of different use cases for that. And then one of the things that I kind of focus on specifically is live event research with Erik. Like he said, he's leading our kind of live outreach and engagement. And so from our year end, we had some data here where Gen Z has really started to come into its own as far as event goers. This chart isn't showing it, but there's a really big growth in festival attendance and expenditures among Gen Z. Millennials used to be the most festival going audience, and now they're kind of tied. In this webinar, we also discussed that live event future intent, the share of people that are likely to go to a concert in the next 12 months is pretty stable since the pandemic. Once we were able to go to concerts, but what's changed there is kind of lower rates of festival intent. So people just overall are less eager to go to a festival in 2024 than we saw in 2022 or 2023. And price sensitivity among consumers has grown substantially. So consumers are now effectively while demand is still high, it's going to be like a price battle as the live event sector kind of has to come down to earth a little bit, although they're still doing very well and growing as well. So that's kind of some of the insights we can glean on the live event space from the survey data. We also just cut this as kind of millennials pass the torch to Gen Z. We also wanted to kind of look at how you might expect the concert landscape to change. And so what we're looking for is the difference in these two bars here. And you see the electronic dance. Gen Z concert goers are actually more interested in electronic dance than millennial concert goers. But millennial concert goers are more into Americana than Gen Z concert goers. So that's kind of like an opportunity for growth, with K-pop being there as well. And then we already see kind of that in the live event, like sales data. But then something like Americana might be underrepresented. Another thing we did, and this might be depending on what kind of data you guys get from this for the hackathon, one really fun project we did is we took 50 artists and then geocoded 1,000 of their shows into their DMAs, and then looked at the streaming data that took place in that DMA when they performed. And we found a very explicit lift across the board for artists. 42% median. We did median because the mean is actually even higher because there's some outliers. And so pretty much we're showing here Maluma, when he came to Sacramento, he had like a 50% growth in streaming versus the 8-week baseline. Morgan Wallen in Phoenix, TLC and Shaggy. And I guess the point we're trying to make with this is that that live events affect streaming and vice versa. And so these metrics are like super valuable. Let's say you're a record company and you want to expect sales to grow. We calculated that Beyonce's Renaissance tour created about 40 million additional streams than if she had just not gone on tour, because of these little micro spikes at the DMA level all aggregate to a huge sum of total streaming when you're on tour. And so you'll see that. And then another thing is you can kind of like fit demand models with streaming data at the DMA level to ticketing data. So in this instance, we're pointing out that Phish probably could have sold more tickets in Philadelphia or booked maybe an extra couple days, because we looked at the total ticket sales by streaming volumes and have added some more sophistication to just a scatter plot. But this is the kind of stuff that we can do. So I'll pass it over to Roatanee for the rest for the UI, and then I'll take it back near the end there. So if we want to pass it over to her, I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. So I am also dialed in from LA. I graduated from Cal State Long Beach back in 2020, where I also did a couple hackathons back in college. I have a background in business analytics, and I'm relatively new to the music industry as well, where I've previously worked at AI startups. So it's been pretty exciting to get into the music business. So yeah, let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to cover over the UI that we have for music consumption data. So this is our homepage. We'll see the What's Trending module, where we'll see trending artists, songs, albums, and singles and EPs based on the selected location. So as of now, we have the United States selected, but if I were to select any of the other 50 plus countries that we have available, then these will repopulate based on streaming activity. So I'm going to navigate to the functionalities that I think will be very helpful. So as you can see, the search bar functionality is self-explanatory, but you're able to navigate to the individual artist, album, or song dashboards that you're looking for. So if I were to look for Fleetwood Mac, then I'm able to see the search results, and I'm just going to navigate to the artist dashboard. So here we have the metadata for this artist. So we're able to see the genre tracking from the artist level. We do have genre tracking on the track and artist level. And one thing I would like to highlight too is if you do need an artist ID particularly for the API, then you can navigate over to more details. And we have this available from the UI. So going back to the main artist dashboard, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to show the 3 KPIs that we have. So we have streams, song sales, and product sales based on the selected time frame and location. We have 3 modules under those KPIs. So the first module would be the activity over time, where this reflects the selected activity. So as of now, we have streams, and this is from the time frame we have selected. The next module we have is the activity by location. And here we're able to see the country level breakouts. And we can also access the markets. So if you go to the right, you're able to see the markets. And when you toggle that on, you have market level data for both US and Canada. Scrolling down, we have the discography. So we will have the albums, videos, and songs where you're able to access the dashboards from here on the respected consumption level. So if I were to go to the song dashboard, all of the dashboards look relatively the same except for the last module, depending on the type of dashboard you're on. So for here, instead of discography on the artist page, we have the recordings for the song. And here you're able to navigate to the ISRC single recording consumption data here, if you were to click into there. Another key feature that I want to highlight is the report builder. So we have two main reports that you can pull. So first, we have the ranking list. And here you're able to create a ranked list of up to 50,000 songs, release groups, or artists based on the metrics that you select and the additional criteria. And this is where all of the metadata comes in handy, where you're able to filter. The next and last report that you can build is the trend report. And this will give you a report over time of up to 500 titles, where you're able to mix and match between artist, release groups, or songs. For any other UI specific questions, you can navigate to the lower left for the question mark, and this will take you to the knowledge base where you're able to navigate through our articles. So say if I was curious on how to build the trend report, then I'm able to click in here, and this will give me a step-by-step guide on how to run this. But you will also have the link on the knowledge base where you're able to navigate through all of our helpful articles, which will give much more detail than I am right now. So now I'm going to jump into the API. So you will have access to 5 endpoints. So we have the musical recordings, and this will give you data of the single ISRC level. We have the songs, which will roll over to the overall song level. We have the musical products, which will be the individual UPCs or IANs. And then we have the musical release groups for the album level. And lastly, the artists, where you're able to get metadata, relationships, and any consumption data from there. So I'm going to go through the artist endpoint. So for the ID, you're able to pull this from the UI as stated earlier. So if I were to go back to the dashboard, I can navigate that here. And since it is a Luminate ID, I can specify that with the ID type here. For location, we have a list of all of the country codes that we have available, but it will default as the US. Pretty straightforward. For the start date and end date, this will specify what time series you want the data for. You can pull up to 10 years of data for the US. And another note too, I want to point out is that there are a lot of parameters, but I'm just going to skip over and focus on the ones that I think are most important and which I think that you will use the most. We do have the documentation here, so you're able to read on it and learn how to use it and what it does. For metadata, I recommend putting to max. And then I'm going to skip down to metrics. And this will specify whether you want streams or sales data, but I'm going to select all. And then we have additional breakout filters. So let's say I was interested in on-demand audio, then I can go to service type and I can toggle this on. And these will be all of the main features for the endpoint. Another thing I do want to highlight is we do have the authenticate endpoint here. So you will, before we use any of the endpoints, you will enter your username, your password, and you will have to access this authenticate endpoint. The API key will be given based on the login information, and the access token will expire every 24 hours. But that is it for the demo portion.
Can you guys hear me and back to this screen here? Because I'll walk you through some of the stuff that we do on the insight side. So there's the streaming data that she just walked you through, which is fantastic and super helpful. And our data, the survey data, answers kind of different questions. It approaches the music industry from a slightly different angle, more based on who your fans are, what their behaviors. It's more consumer specific. So what are consumer behaviors that we need to keep an eye on? What's the demographic composition of the fandom that we're looking at, the device usage, other media that they consume. So other platforms where artists can do, optimize their marketing, or even other entertainment, behaviors. So what maybe movie or TV and film opportunities exist for, any given artist. And then obviously fan monetization. What are the best avenues to monetize fans? For some people it's physical, for some people it's merch, for some people it's, for K-pop artists, a lot more merch. And for some people it's, online communities, Patreon, Discord, and stuff like that. We have 3 major studies. We have the artist and genre tracker, which is what I talked about earlier, the data on artist-specific talent. We have the Music 360, which is, I kind of think of like a macro study on music specifically. So it's all of this, it's genre listenership, it's DSP usage, it's time spent listening to music, money spent, the different monetization channels, live event stuff that came from the Music 360. That's kind of like this most central study, but it's not as granular as the artist and genre tracker. And then we have the Entertainment 365, which is kind of more broader entertainment. So it's not as helpful for this hackathon, but everything's available here in a dashboard. And I'll pop the dashboard up just so you can see there's 2 dashboards. There is the artist and genre dashboard, and that also has an archive. So these are pretty big files, so we needed to split it up. And so here we have, let's turn this artist demographics. So here we have demographics for the filter I put on here was Charli XCX fans. And we can look at the demographic distribution of Charli XCX fans in the US. Unfortunately, our surveys are mostly US focused. We do have some international studies, but the survey data is more focused in the US. So, I know that there's a lot of fun international analyses to do, but with the survey data, you're a little constrained to the US. But it shows you that, Charli XCX fans are disproportionately have a LGBTQ plus identity. They're disproportionately young, kind of a lot of assumptions that you would make about Charli XCX fans that are kind of validated in the data. There's not much of a unique racial or ethnic distribution. It's quite aligned with the national rates. And so you can kind of just click these on and off. And, if you want to compare it to Chapel Roan, It's also a 60-40 gender split. But there's so many different dimensions you can analyze with this dashboard too. Chapel Roan's demographic is much more focused on this 18 to 24-year-old audience than Charlie XCX fans are. That's 3x the rate of the US distribution, the Gen Pop distribution. That's so this is the kind of stuff that you can get into with the artisan genre tracker. You can also go into the fan media behaviors. So right now there's this filter on Sabrina Carpenter for her fan media behaviors up here, and you can toggle that. This is aware of Sabrina Carpenter. And so we can look at the different audio channels, music consumption, and index that to the US as well. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I just don't have time to show you all. And I would encourage everyone to get into this and then get into the US 360 dashboard as well. I think, let me see, just put my slideshow on. And I think that we're ready for questions, or we only have 2 minutes left. Sorry about that.
We are ready for maybe one question. Let's see. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is a fun one to close things out on. Genre tagging is tricky. How do you guys manage genre tagging? How do you make it happen, basically?
That's a question that I'm not qualified. We have a team that does that. We collect, well, first off, with Billboard and the labels, we have this kind of ecosystem of people being able to provide that information to us directly. Then there's also variety of metadata sources that we kind of draw from, and I don't know the exact answer to that. I mean, it's a really tough question in the industry, and I know that there's a lot of people doing some really sophisticated things, and they're also automating a lot of that with AI. Yeah, genre is a very tricky thing. I mean, you can take all these data sources and then compress that. Like there's hundreds of different genres from hundreds of different IDs that you have to link back and kind of put those into it. But the main answer is Billboard and the major labels and our teams go and manually will qualify. Well, not manually, but and Billboard has a whole team of people that do that, and the labels also want to have an incentive to have their genre be accurate in our data. So.
Makes total sense. It is a very tricky question. Fun fact, when I interview data analysts, it's one of the questions I ask them is how would you classify genre? Because it's such a fun question to tackle. Unfortunately, we are out of time. This was really great, Grant. Great to the whole team. Thank you guys so much for the support yet again this year. I will also let you know that you got a shout out from Songkick 2 sessions back. Nice. So there's lots of love here at Measure of Music. Okay. We're wrapping up. So thank you so much, Grant. Thank you, Erik. Thank you, Roatanee. Really appreciate it. We are headed over to our next session, which is with BandLab. So I'll see you guys over there.